Good morning, Chalice. Will you join me in prayer? Holy God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be acceptable to you, for you are our rock and our Redeemer. Last week, we began a 2-week look at the parable of the sower and how Jesus had to explain to the disciples what this parable meant. And we took the perspective of a seed. What does it feel to be a seed in soil that just isn't right for your spiritual growth? To be in rocky soil where we are blacked out and blocked out by the sun and are around noisy gravel. To be in a thorny bush and poked at by the plants that are seemingly able to grow there, and yet they don't want you to grow. But Jesus tells his disciples about a third soil where the sower will plant his seed. The seed that falls into rich soil. This rich soil has everything that the seed needs for its growth. Good, porous ground, able to soak up water and hold it to encourage the plants to drink. Good access to sunlight in order for photosynthesis to occur. Good soil that is deep and allows the roots to dig deep in order to make the plants withstand the hardship of what is happening on top. So what makes good soil? Water, light, and depth. Water is needed in order to hydrate so that the seeds can begin to grow. Sometimes some crops need a flood in order to literally begin to sprout. Now, I've seen it hundreds and hundreds of times back home in Kentucky, and even when I lived in Indiana. We could be in a dry spell, and you would drive past some farmland, and it would look like a lake. But there's no lake there. Now, the farmers would do this in order to saturate the land, to make it easier for the seeds that they are attempting to sprout to, well, sprout. And sometimes the seeds just need a drip of water in order to grow. Some plants can grow with just a drip of irrigation. Now, I don't know how far this metaphor goes with how you were baptized, whether being immersed as a believer or being sprinkled on as a baby, but our baptisms are the hydration we as seeds need to grow. We need that water. And here's the really cool thing about baptism. You can't do it yourself. I mean, sure, you could go out into your pool or into a tub and say the words and submerge yourself. But the purpose of baptism isn't getting wet. It is making a declaration to God and to the community that you are thirsty for something new to grow. You yearn for something like a wanderer in the desert yearning for water. So good soil needs us to remember our baptisms and what it means to be committed to this movement and to this community. But it's also a reminder to remember not only the theological implications of our baptism, but if we can, think about our actual baptisms. Think about who was there, who performed it. And when you wiped your eyes from the water, what do you remember seeing first? Who do you remember seeing first? Remember that. Remember them. And if you have tears in this moment, then you're literally watering your soil. Seeds also need access to light. The sun needs to be able to reach the ground in order for the seed to grow. Light is essential for growth. Plants don't grow in darkness. In high school biology class, we learn about photosynthesis. But in our scriptures, we are reminded that Jesus is the light of the world. And because of our faith journey of following Jesus, we carry that light with us as well. The parable that we've been reading for the last 2 weeks is from Mark chapter 4, verses 1 through 20. But do you know what verse 21 says? It reads, Do you bring in a lamp to put it under a bushel basket? This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. And then we get to hide it under a bushel. No! We have to let the light shine that we have received. Shine the bright light of God's love onto people's paths. When we light our candle each week in worship, we not only are recognizing Jesus' presence with us in this moment, but that fire had to come from somewhere first. That light had to come from somewhere first. A first match strike. Then it was transferred to the candlestick. Now, I'm sure there's probably a really big theological term and liturgical term for those bronze candlesticks. But the light is carried on that to our altar to light the candle. But that act, that lighting a match, carrying the light, and lighting this candle, as a reminder of Christ's presence in our midst, that act, those three things, lighting, carrying, remembering, should stand as a practice for how we carry God's light out of this place, into the world. It should stand as a reminder to us that when our light feels dim, we bring the light that we carry to light the path for others. I'm sure we can all recall a time where things felt dark, where the world was a bit too heavy for us to carry. And who was there to shine a light? The people of church. Sure, not 100% of them, but enough of them. One or two. Those who brought you a meal, shared a hug with you. Those who brought a reflection of their faith that brought comfort. Allowing them to participate in that photosynthesis that has allowed us to grow. Seeds also need deep soil to grow. Seeds that fall in shallow soil, the roots don't grow deep enough. And so when the storms and winds of the world come, they just fall right over. But a seed that is planted in deep soil, well, soil that just isn't surface level, soil that just isn't checking in to see how your week went and not really listening, but rather a deep soil that already knows your week was bad. A deep soil that knows that your month has been awful. A depth that provides strength to weather the storms. And sometimes it means we have to make the soil deep for ourselves. Now, Rebecca, one of our elders, alluded to this last week in her communion meditation. But sometimes soil depth is created by adding to it. We add manure, fertilizer. Now, any farmer, any home gardener, or any kindergartner who just learned about what fertilizer was can tell you that fertilizer is like steroids for plants. It makes plants grow faster and stronger. It makes the soil more deep, and it allows the worms in the soil to have something to munch on as well. Sometimes, in order to make soil rich and make our growth possible, we have to wade through some manure together. Sometimes manure can be those times in life where nothing seems to be right. Sometimes manure can be those times in life where a community is struggling. Sometimes manure can be the sudden loss of a friend or a family member. All of that is manure. And we can't avoid that. It's part of this life. But it's fertilizer. and it helps us grow. And when we wade in fertilizer together, we can sprout some pretty beautiful flowers. Wading through fertilizer sprouts flowers of joy. If you take a look at any liberation moment in history, those movements may be grounded in real scary places with real scary situations happening, with real oppression taking place. But if you ask the people who are in the muck, what is the one thing that those who seek to oppress you, what is the one thing they can't take away from you? The answer is joy. It's why at Pride festivals, the people are keenly aware of the threat that surrounds them, and yet they choose to smile and be happy because they have gathered together. Just yesterday at Chandler Pride, Bob, Jim, Tammy, and myself had some conversations with some members of the local LGBTQ plus community. One was a young teenager. And she saw our table and she said, "Oh, are you a church that promotes gay?" To which we all got a little chuckle because it was just a funny way of phrasing what she was asking. We said, "No, it's not that we promote gays, it's that we are open and affirming. And what that means is that we welcome people not just regardless of their sexual orientation, but because of how they have been mistreated and abused by many other congregations who have a cross and bear the name Christian. We explicitly welcome and invite the LGBTQ plus community to worship God and to participate in our church's leadership. That's who we are." "Oh," she said. "A lot of my friends' families go to churches where they are told they're sinning or that they're wrong. It's really cool to see a church that's welcoming." Now, that conversation equally made me really happy and equally kind of bummed out. You see, I was happy because in that moment, we were able to show this young person a different way of doing church. We showed her how we believe we are best called to live and follow God. But I was sad because I'm 39 years old and going to be 40 next month. And this is still a struggle for the church. And there are still people who think there is just one Christian voice on, well, just about anything. And it bums me out because people are wanting to live faithful lives and do it in the midst of a community. And yet they feel as though they need to hide their light under a bushel basket because of who and how they want to show romantic love. It's also why in the civil rights era, music was an essential part to easing the tension of what they were facing. If the marchers and protesters were singing, there was joy in creating the idea of Black Joy. Cleaver Cruz, who is the founder of the Black Joy Project, says, "Black Joy is not dismissing or creating an alternate Black narrative that ignores the realities of our collective pain. Rather, it is about holding the pain and injustice in tension with the joy we experience. It's about using that joy as an entry into understanding the oppressive forces we navigate through as a means to imagine and create a world free of them." Wading through fertilizer. Sparking joy. Wading through fertilizer means being at a family funeral and you look out expecting only to see your family, and yet you see just one face from your church, reminding you of the community that is with you on this journey. So what then is good soil? Good soil looks like church. It looks like a place that welcomes unconditionally and nurtures the spiritual growth of any who walk through those doors seeking God's transformation and love. It looks like a church that allows children to ask big questions. It looks like a church that allows its children to wiggle and squirm and worship like worms in the soil with no judgment. It looks like a church, when things aren't perfect, not giving up. It looks like a church that is willing to do the hard work to continue its mission in a place where the soil is not ripe for its voice. But even in a desert, we can make the soil as rich as we can possibly make it. Let us be keenly aware of the soil in which we are planted on. Let us be keenly aware of the nutrients, the hydration, the light. Because our growth, both as individuals, and as a faith community, it relies on the soil in which we are planted. As Thanksgiving approaches, let us be aware of the harvest. For the harvest that comes from the fertile soil, we are absolutely thankful. For the food on our tables, for the cornucopias and other centerpieces, we will give thanks. But what are we really thankful for? I'll bet it's the seeds that are around us that are blossoming currently into beautiful plants alongside of us, growing, and thanks to water, light, and a whole bunch of fertilizer. Amen.